verse 11 and 12. I'll read it again. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Hello, my name is Kara England. I am a Christian. I'm a member of the Kapolei Church of Christ. Born in Waimanalo, been married for 32 years. Eric and I met in college. Met in college in Tennessee, and it was called Reed-Hardman University. It is a Christian college. I have a mother of a daughter. She's 19 years old. Her name is Morgan Starr. She is a member of Hawaii's Air National Guard. She is, thank you, she is a political science with emphasis on international studies major. I'm also a business owner for the last 18 years. So, I forgot to put down, I'm a former homeschooler as well, so I homeschooled my daughter. So, why do I educate others about sex trafficking? To be honest, when I found out 18 months ago at a meeting, I was shocked to find out that trafficking of minors existed here in Hawaii. I was oblivious to this whole sex industry. To think that this was happening in my own backyard infuriated me. And just like John mentioned, I am not one to sit and let things go on. I am a doer. I wanted to do something about this through prevention and education. So this is why I am here today. So today on Freedom Sunday, I want to focus on sex trafficking of minors. Now, there are other words that are synonymous to this. You've heard them all. Child sex slavery, child sex trafficking, prostitution, or CSEC, and I will define that term on the next slide. The definition of sex trafficking of minors by the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 reads, the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age. So what I want to do is take a few moments to kind of go through those words and kind of define it a little bit more. So recruitment. If you recruit, bringing people in, you are breaking the law. If you harbor, giving shelter to hide someone, you are breaking the law. If you move people across lines using vehicles, planes, boats, etc., you are breaking the law. Provisions, providing food, clothing, shelter to these victims, again, breaking the law. Soliciting, patronizing, buying, spending money for sex, you are breaking the law. Traffickers use force, fraud, and coercion as tricks to keep the victim trapped. So let's define these words. Force, kidnapping, using violence, sexual assault, drugging. Fraud, false promises like modeling agencies or photographers pretending to offer legitimate employment. Tricking victims into believing the trafficker loves him or her. Preying on desperation or poverty, the at-risk youth. Coercion, blackmail, intimidation, threats against victim's family or to the family. And thirdly, definition of CSEC, the commercial sexual exploitation of children. The definition reads, sexual activity involving a child in exchange for something of value or promise thereof to the child or any person or persons. Okay? So now that we've got the definitions defined, I will tell you more about how these children are tricked into this industry And just like John had mentioned, this is an industry, the sex industry of children. And is the top 3, and it's closely coming to the top 2 ways of how criminal organizations make money. First is drugs, sex with children, and third is weapons. There are 6 pathways of trafficking. Believe it or not, parents, relatives, desperation, these are runaways. I will go into detail, but the Romeo, lover boy, boyfriend, pimp, just to let you know on the side, trafficker and pimp are the same terms. And then pimp, that's your traditional word that you've always heard, but now they're giving it more like the guerrilla pimp because they use force and violence to traffic their victims. And then the last pathway is gangs. So let's talk about the Romeo, boyfriend, lover boy, pimp method of recruitment. Romeo pimp represents himself as a boyfriend and woo the girl with gifts, promises, and adventure. Now this is a side note. This happens to boys as well, but 90% plus are reported by women. But we know this happens to boys as well. So you can use the pronouns. The Romeo pimp will present herself as a girlfriend and woo the girl or the boy with gifts, promises, and adventure. So as I was training with Ho'ola Napua as their education advocate, they gave a scenario which I thought was brilliant on the criminal element, but very sad for the victim. So there is 2 people involved, the spotter and the groomer. The spotter goes to schools, malls, parks, bus stops, approach runaways. They try to gain their trust. They'll learn a little bit more about them. If they're not a runaway, if they're a bunch of girls at the mall, they'll approach them. And they'll say words like, "Oh, you're so pretty today. Oh, you look so good." And they're looking for the reactions. They're looking for the girl that shows a little bit of low self-esteem, a little bit on the shyer side. They don't go after the girl that says, "Get lost, get out of here, who are you?" They go after the girl that's shy, maybe giggles, looks down. These spotters have been trained to use psychological methods to find out who their next victim is, and they are paid very well. So once the spotter hones in on his victim, potential victim, he'll gain as much information from her. And as you talk, you'll tell him, "Oh yeah, I come to the mall every Thursday. Or I go to the movies on Fridays. Or I go to this school. Or this just conversation." And guess what? The next time, he will look for her and go, "Oh yeah, Thursday, she's at the mall. I'm going to be there." And then they'll bump into each other. And she'll go, "Oh," and of course she's beginning to trust him because, "Oh my gosh, he's so nice." And then there'll be the day after talking, grooming, or just gaining trust. They'll say, "Come to a party. I'll introduce you to some of my friends." And he will say to her, "Come by yourself," right? Because the other girls are going to say, "No way." So they go to the party. Then the spotter hands off the girl to the groomer. And that groomer goes into the dating phase. That groomer becomes the boyfriend. He'll normalize sex. He'll isolate the victim, keeping the victim from her friends, controlling her time. And when the victim starts to resist or says no or wants to leave, that's when the coercion, the violence, and the blackmail will start. So can you imagine she's 16 years old. The guy's already got it set up. He's got pictures, videos of them having sex. He threatens, "I'm going to put this on Instagram. I'm going to put this on Facebook. And what do you think your mom's going to think," right? So you're blocking her into a position where she has no other way but to stay. And then they'll control and limit their movements. Tell them, "Oh, why don't you just move in with me?" And then she becomes a runaway. Because the mother and father do not know this is all happening under her nose. Or their nose. Why don't they leave? Traffickers control techniques. They're master manipulators. They use tactics to create trauma bonds with their victims. They manipulate, they use psychological controls, they restrict freedom of movement, they threaten to secure submission, they invoke fear. Now, the one thing that they had mentioned in their training is that the groomer never breaks a promise. Because that will be one day when she's going to say, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. And when he makes his threat, she has no other reason why he won't come through with it. I will hurt you, I will beat you, I will send this to Instagram, because he's never broken a promise with her. So, invoking fear. Why don't they leave victim's point of view? So they feel shame. They have lack of resources. They don't have a place to live. Many come from broken or troubled home life. They formed emotional attachment. That's called trauma bonding. They feel obligated through manipulation, and they lose loss of self-worth. Arizona State University did a study nationwide, and they found in Hawaii, 1 out of 11 adult males solicit sex online. They did a 6-year study. Why is sex trafficking so common in Hawaii? Because we have professional sports that brings all kinds of people to our islands, tourism, our convention center prior to COVID-19 was packed for 2 years. The calendars were packed, again, bringing people from all over the world. Illegal massage parlors, and not to speak badly, but our military. Now, you would have to think, oh, this is never going to happen in my family, because I know better, right? But the risk factor, who is being targeted? Any youth with any background. Doesn't have to come from poor, that child could be middle class, could be upper, whatever. It is still an opportunity for somebody to remember they're manipulating these girls into thinking that there's something else. So it's anybody's at risk. Individuals with history of abuse, physical, sexual, including domestic violence. The homeless, the houseless. Runaways. In Hawaii, within 48 hours of a runaway being on the street, a third will be approached for sex. So this message is to parents, grandparents, family members, and friends. There are warning signs. That older boyfriend, girlfriend, you will see this person being controlling, encouraging victims in illegal activities to achieve their goals and dreams. Vague about their profession, they're pushy about sex, they will buy expensive gifts. Second cell phone. If your child, granddaughter, neighbor has a second cell phone, it was not purchased by the family, that is a red flag. That's almost, you've got to pull that child aside. You have to talk to that child because there is something going on with that second cell phone. They are sexualized behavior. They dress differently now. They act differently. Or they're constantly running away. Or they're skipping school, overly tired in school. Unexplained expensive clothes and gifts. You'll see bruises sometimes. Sometimes they are branded. They're given a tattoo. The pimp, the groomer, will brand their victims. And behavioral. They're withdrawn, they're distracted, and depressed. So why I'm telling you this is because I was shocked that these girls would go to school and do these things on the side with their boyfriend and then come home late at night. They live at home. They're not all the runaways. These are girls and boys that come home. They go to school, their pimp picks them up, they do their thing, and drops them off back at school, at home. They live at home. That's what was so shocking to me. Dangers of the social media and internet. Okay, spotters will use social media. Solicitors, perpetrators will go online to solicit sex. Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, Kik, WhatsApp, and Viber. They're on all of them. And they will use fake names and fake pictures to lure these young women and boys. So I encourage you, so if there's something that you want to do, let's do this. Have an open line of communication regarding social media and the safety rules. Limit the time. Protect privacy. Never, never, never give out personal information about school, extracurricular activities, favorite anything. Keep it private. Trust your instincts. Even they're young, they have instincts, so if it doesn't sit right with mom, block. Ask yourself, would I do this in person? People act differently when online than in person. Okay? So I'm going to give you some numbers. This is the how to get help. The Hawaii 24-hour crisis line is 1-800-721-9614. The national line is 1-888-373-7888. And then the Runaway Safe line is 1-800-RUN-AWAY, or you can text 6608. So I want to introduce something by the U.S. Homeland Security. It's called the Blue Campaign. One voice, one mission to end human trafficking. I included their phone number. To report suspicious human trafficking activity, there is another line. So one of their main goals is to teach people that work in airlines, they're drivers for Uber, they're restaurant workers, cashiers, fields that has lots of action. They're teaching you how to recognize victims of human trafficking, warning signs, inability to make eye contact. So if you ask that child a question just by talking and they don't look at you, they look a little bit malnourished, they show signs of abuse, or they have no possessions on them, that's in the airlines. If they go through the gate and they don't even have a bag, that's a sign. They lack general knowledge of the area where they live in because they don't know, right? They're just being taken to wherever. And they have a skewed sense of time, like they don't even know what day it is. If it's even September, you know? So here we are. How we're going to make a change in Hawaii, getting involved locally. Ho'olanapua does it through education, prevention of sex trafficking of minors in Hawaii. They need volunteers. They need education advocates like myself. We go into the schools and we teach the middle schoolers to high schools what is sex trafficking. The Starfish Mentoring Program. If you have 2 hours a week, you can mentor a girl who's been, or a boy who's been rescued from sex trafficking. And they have lots of events throughout the islands. They need someone to man tables for Ho'olanapua. And that is their webpage, ho'olanapua.org, and then you can go under volunteers. So that's the local. Okay. So let me tell you about what I do. I have a program that I founded called the Perfect Circle. It has 2 purposes. Help survivors of domestic violence to become financially independent. And 2, the mission up there, it says, help end homelessness in Hawaii by providing food, clothing, hygiene, and social services to help transition individuals into homes. It's an outreach program. The people who we serve are called guests. We go to our guests and provide our services. We aim to serve all who are in need. This is called radical hospitality. We take the Perfect Circle program to the streets. So why do I bring up the Perfect Circle program and Freedom Sunday? It's because victims, like I said, have victims of sex trafficking may be runaways or homeless. Within, again, 48 hours, a third of Hawaii's runaways will be solicited for sex. The Perfect Circle program can help prevent another person from being a victim of sex trafficking. Because if we're out there on the streets and we're clothing and feeding and help offering social services, I've partnered up with a social worker. She knows all the paperwork to get started so they can get into housing. If we're out there on the streets, then they will know that we are the beacon, right? They were to say, oh, yeah, that's the people that feeds, and oh yeah, they can give us this. That's the perfect circle. We make people whole again. Circle, okay? So remember I had said, I'm going to read all of Romans 12. I'm going to read it again. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Verse 13. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
The power of hell forever defeated. Now it is well. I'm walking in freedom for God's soul.